Hey there, YouTube. Have you ever wondered what it means to initialize and format a drive? Or what exactly it's doing to the drive? Or how about when you go into your disk manager or your partition manager, again, depending on what operating system you're using, and it loads, and it gives you a message like this where you must initialize the disk, and it asks either Mbr or GPT. So, what does it mean? Like, if we come down to disk 4, and it says it's not initialized, and it's unallocated, and what does this mean on a byte level? So, if we go to a hex editor, and this will allow us to see the raw binary and raw data on the drive. So, open this up. And we'll select our disk here. So I'm going to select our disk 4 and we'll open it. And this is what comes up. And if you notice, it's all zeros. And it's just not for the first sector, it's for the entire drive. It's all zeros. So basically, there's absolutely nothing on this drive, because again, it's all zeros, and whoever had this drive before I bought it off of eBay, they zero level formatted the drive, and they wiped everything down to the bytes. So there is absolutely no retrievable data on this drive. But what does this have to do with setting up an MBR? Or initializing a drive? So if you notice, we're at the first part of the drive here, the very beginning, and again, there's absolutely nothing because it's all zeros. So keep that in mind. But if we close it and we go back to our disk manager and we say, I don't know, initialize, and we'll initialize it with MBR, well, there you go. It initializes the drive. Now, we still can't put data on this drive yet, but what exactly did we do? Now, if we go back to our hex editor, and we reopen the drive, you'll see now it puts some data here, but what does this data do? Now this is basically the Mbr and Boot Sector. So the first sector of any drive is basically a combination of the Boot Sector and Mbr. And if you look here, down at the bottom, it'll even say invalid partition table, error loading operating system, missing operating system. So what part of initializing is it creates a place, so if you do want to put something that can boot, like Windows or Linux or some kind of utility, again, you see more utilities for flash drives, it will actually create a place here where instructions can be put to load the loading an operating system or utility. Now again, if you do try to boot to this drive and you don't have anything, it'll default to this message. So, invalid partition table, error loading operating system, missing operating system, blah, 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 blah. Now, also, up in here, this has some basic data of the raw structure of the drive. And this will help later on when we have to set up things like partitions and dealing with certain drives. Now, our MBR here can only handle up to about 2 terabytes. GPT, on the other hand, can handle much larger drives, which we'll talk about in part 2. But basically, all this here, again, the program condenses it from binary into hexadecimal, so it's, easier to read and not just a bunch of ones and zeros. But all this basically contains the basic information of the drive. So, that is basically what happens when you initialize a drive with Mbr. We'll take a quick look at what happens when you do GPT in Part 2, and then in Part 3 we'll take a look at what happens when you format a drive. Because if we go to cluster 2048, you'll notice that there's still nothing there or nothing around it. So that's basically what happens and what you can look forward to. Once again, YouTube, thanks for watching.